you can achieve and you can make anything that you want happen if you believe in yourself and you don't give up and you don't take no for an answer. And I have never taken no for an answer. If things didn't work out at the academy, I moved on and I found another school and another instructor that can work with me. And like that fire has always been lit in me. And I know that no matter what, I'm going to get there.
Hello and welcome to the Ambitious Women of Color podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Lynn Rojas. This episode is part of our industry series where we spotlight ambitious women of color breaking into spaces that were built for us. Today, we're talking about what it really takes to pursue a non-traditional, high-barrier career and why more of us belong in these rooms. I'm joined by Betty Garcia, who shares her journey from UC Berkeley to flight attendant to now working towards becoming a commercial pilot. And we get into the full story, the barriers, the cost, the lack of representation, and what it's like being one of the only Latinas in aviation. We talk about the parts that people don't see, burnout, being undervalued, navigating male-dominated spaces, and what it takes to keep going anyway. If you ever felt called to something bigger, but question if it's realistic, accessible, or even for you, this episode will open your perspective because ambitious women of color are doing this, and so can you. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. I am so excited for our guest today. Betty, I'm so happy that you're here. And we've known each other since 2013, I want to say, so over 10 years. And I've been able to witness all your growth and your journey and your career. So I'm really excited to have you here. I wanted to start this series focusing on those fields that feel inaccessible for many women, especially women of color. Aviation is a male dominant and expensive and technical field. So wanted to
Mhm.
start the series with you and just highlighting your experience and what you've done. Before we jump into
Yeah.
your journey, I would love to ask you our signature question. So what is one thing that you refuse to sacrifice for your career?
So there are many things that I refuse to sacrifice in order for me to become who I want to become and where I want to end up in my career. One of the things is my self identity, like who I am, what I represent, like my values. I think that in the aviation industry specifically, since it's a male dominated industry, there are many times where you're going to encounter people who will tell you no, or people who will try to belittle you and diminish you and tell you that you're not good enough and refuse to ever let specifically a man in this field tell me you can't do it or you're not good enough. Up until today, I have had both men and women both say she's not cut out for it. But then you have the other side where you do meet good men and good women that will say, you are capable or you are amazing or you're great at that. So it's like cutting out the noise and continuing on and not letting any of that kind of get in the way of what I want to do and what I want to achieve in life. So yeah, just my self-worth, my value, and never losing sight of who I am and what I want to become.
I love that. And especially I know in all of your journey and trajectory, and I know we're going to dive into that, but a lot of us that came from low income communities and places where the areas or spaces that we're in now were not something that was modeled or that was seen. So when they see a girl that grew up in that area, you don't expect that they will achieve the things that we have. So it's just amazing to not let the no's or the people that belittle you or look down on you or think of you as not capable of doing that, not letting that stop you. Because I mean, we know so many people who, the upbringing doesn't match where they end up. And I think
Hmm.
that that is what gives you that grit and that resilience. You're like, heck
Yeah.
no, I'm going to do this and I'm going to prove everyone wrong.
Think we can take it back for those who are listening or watching, give them a little background. So I grew up in San Bernardino, California, low income community. My parents immigrated here when they were little. They became US citizens, but nonetheless, we didn't have the resources and opportunities that someone from a middle or higher income class had. And I'm one of six. So I have four other sisters, one brother. We grew up in a way where we had to share everything. And if you wanted something, you were going to go after it. So someone telling us, no, you're not capable, it's like we're already at the bottom. the only way in life is up. So the only way that we can make anything happen with our lives was to do good in school, to do good in sports. Like there was no other option of like failure because we already didn't have that much. We didn't come from money. Like everything we ever achieved, or like me specifically, I did it because I knew that I wanted better for myself and my future. And I knew at a young age, like the only way to make it out the hood is by doing good in school. I was in all of the honor classes. I had Avid as an elective. I was in every every club you can think of. I was president of junior class president, senior class president. I was captain of soccer, cross country, track. So I built my resume as a kid, because I knew that that's what colleges wanted to see when you applied. You know, I applied to UC Berkeley, UCLA, UC Santa Barbara, UC San Diego, and I got accepted into all of those universities. So in the end, I had like endless opportunities to be able to choose where I wanted to go. And that was a beautiful thing. And being a low income student, even at that time, because I was in a program like Avid, I knew that I could apply for scholarships. So I then applied to the Dell Scholarship. The Michael and Susan Dell Foundation awarded me $20,000, and they
Oh,
gave me a
wow.
laptop, and they gave me basically that $20,000 was 5,000 for each school year. So my entire 4 years I ended up going to Berkeley, UC Berkeley. Basically they would give the school every year the 5,000. So that would get dispersed. And then because I had a couple other scholarships that I was awarded, in the end, the way that the school is works is if your tuition's covered, everything else comes as a refund check. So I had to learn, not, coming from not having money to having like,
Mhm.
$5,000 in my bank account at once. I'm like, what am I going to do with this money? So the responsible thing was I paid my rent, and then I saw what I had left. So by doing all of that, I was already at a young age advocating for myself and my future. And like I was learning as I was, growing. And
Mhm.
and it wasn't until I got to UC Berkeley, I had endless opportunities that were introduced to me there, like studying abroad. I took advantage of all the resources that were available in school. And I was always a student that asked, like, how do I get there? How do I do that? Oh, I want to join that. Like, what are the benefits? And really quickly, I learned that you can study abroad. So ended up applying. I studied abroad in first Madrid, Spain, at Carlos III University, and I studied business because that was my major at the time. I was like undeclared business. So when I was in
Mhm.
Madrid, I took business classes, 5 classes. And then when I was there, I'm like, people are like, how did you know you wanted to go to Madrid? I'm like, I didn't. I solely chose Madrid because I played soccer as a kid and like my whole life. So I just wanted to go to a country that I knew was like, they speak Spanish. I speak Spanish, and it's a soccer country. So I'm like, oh, how cool would that be? So when I applied, I got
Mhm.
in. I knew nothing about the world and travels and how to get there. I just knew that I was going to get there. And every step of the way, I'm like, I didn't know how I was going to make it happen. But even for Madrid, I had applied for a scholarship and I was awarded that scholarship. You can apply to scholarships when you go abroad as well. So
Mhm.
I want to say that scholarships have gotten me like where I am in life because I'm always it's a simple essay that you need to write. You pour your heart out into it. You share your story. They have a topic, and I've always, I don't always get them awarded, but when I do, it's such a good feeling. So Madrid opened the door for me to learn about the world. And then once I came back from studying abroad in Madrid, I finished in 4 years, and I still had enough funding to be able to study abroad one more time. So I decided I want to go to Brazil for the World Cup. And I
Mhm.
was only going to be there for a summer. It was a summer intensive program. And then when I was in Brazil, I learned Portuguese. I was in an immersive, intensive Portuguese language program.
Mhm.
It's called Pontificia, PUC, like Universidad in Gavia, and it's in Rio de Janeiro. And when I was there, I fell in love with the country. I didn't want to leave. Like I overstayed my welcome. I wanted to continue studying. So
Was it a
I
year,
did like
right?
I did a year, yeah, and then I stayed a little bit after, like a year and a half. And then when I came back to the US, the fluent Portuguese speaker, I was like, how do I get back to Brazil? Like, how can I travel there? So I was like looking up Portuguese travel consultant, Portuguese speaker, and then that's how I landed at Portuguese flight attendant. And then I can see all the airlines that have those applications. So United Airlines, American Airlines, Delta Airlines, they all had Portuguese speaker positions. So I applied. I didn't know anything about regional carriers, major carriers, the small planes, the big planes. I literally just applied to those airlines that had Portuguese speakers because I'm like, ooh, I get travel benefits. I looked up the qualifications. I'm like, oh, I have that. I have that. I'm like, yes. So then one night I catered my resume to what they wanted. And within 10 days, I was already doing the interview online and I made it to the next round and that's when they fly you out. So I flew out to San Francisco and I did my in-person interview. It was like 2 rounds and then they tell you that same day whether you got it. And so then I became a flight attendant. And I was going to training October 2015. I went to training. I graduated December 2015. And then I started flying then. And as soon as I started on the line, like I'm working as a flight attendant,
Mhm.
that's when one day I had a trip and then I saw like my first female pilot. I had never in my life seen a woman pilot before. And she walks in and I'm like, oh my God, how did she become a pilot? So then I asked her, I was like, how did you become a pilot? Or like, because there's times where we can go up to the flight deck and talk to them. And
Mhm.
then her name, she had like a slight accent and her name was a little foreign. And I'm like, huh. I was like, where are you from? Because I never care to ask like what your ethnic
Mhm.
background is, like, and she's like, I'm Brazilian. And I'm like, what? And so when she said that, I'm like, você brasileira? And I started speaking to her in Portuguese. I was like, I just came back from Brazil. This is why I'm here. I'm like, how? And then, at that point I felt that comfort, like that
Mhm.
homie, like we're both Latinas, I can ask you and feel comfortable asking you, like, how did you become a pilot? And she's like, well, I started as a flight attendant. And I was like, oh my God, okay, tell me everything.
You're like
And
my
so,
journey.
yes, yes. And she's like, I was a flight attendant for 10 years. She's like, I did everything to try to afford it. Back then, it was so much cheaper. But she's like, you should do a discovery flight. What discovery flight is when you go to an airport, any local airports,
Mhm.
majority of them have like a little flight school where you go in and you ask them like, hey, I'd like to do a discovery flight, and then one of their flight instructors will take you up. You pay like $100. I'm not sure how much it is now. It might be like 150, but they take you up for like an hour, and then sometimes depends on for my flight, my discovery flight, they did let me, fly the plane a little bit. Of
Mhm.
course, the instructor is on command. I mean, he has
Mhm.
his hands, ready in case I do something crazy.
Mhm.
But when I was flying, that one time I had my discovery flight, my instructor at the time was like, even if you don't pursue flight training here, I think you should still pursue it wherever you go, wherever you decide to go, because I can see that you have an eye for this. And so I know that it's expensive. I know that you're going to have to look for the resources and stuff, but I think that you shouldn't give it up. Like, if this is something that you want to do, and like I can see that you're looking outside, and the first steps of learning to fly is all visual flight rules. Like, you're looking outside, nothing is inside.
Mhm.
So he's like, you were already looking outside, you were banking the airplane, and you were like looking around. He's like, those are good indications of you, like
Mhm.
like baby steps to becoming a pilot. So that's when everything else began, and like I can continue to share, but I don't know if you have any questions. I've already shared
Wow.
a lot.
Yeah, this is pretty incredible and yes, pretty amazing how like your journey began. And I want to go even back to you were talking about like growing up and building your resume as a young kid. And I think that not a lot of people really talk about that or even are aware that as young as like elementary school, middle school, like some of us, that's what we
Hmm.
have to do. Like build our
Yeah.
resume from like third grade. And Especially like you said, in like a household where you were one of 6 and you had to like do that.
Yeah.
I want to honor that young Betty that had to, from the
Yeah.
beginning, start being resourceful and be like, "Okay, no is not an option. No is not
Yeah.
like I am going to look for every opportunity."
Exactly, yeah. So I think that because my parents went up to like middle school, like they didn't go to high school, they didn't have that opportunity to be in school and like learn and grow. So I knew that I couldn't go to my parents for help on homework and things like that. So like I said, I utilized my resources. I knew that I needed to go to my teachers and I needed to ask them for help. And I have never been afraid to ask for help. And there's times where, like, let's just say I had sports and I had to miss a class or leave a little early. I always would tell my teachers, like, hey, I have to do this and that. Is there a way that you can provide tutoring or free tutoring or like something where I can go get that extra help because I'm not understanding a subject? So I am a
Mhm.
huge advocate for utilizing all your resources. I am never afraid to share that. I would go to tutoring all the time and I would take advantage of that. Like after whether it was soccer practice or cross country practice, I would be in there or I would get to practice a little late. I would miss like the warm up and I think because teachers knew I was a good student and my coaches knew I was a
Mhm.
good athlete, they were willing to offer that support, you know? And I always say, like, boo-hoo, like, your parents weren't supportive. I'm like, mine were not either. Like, my parents didn't want me to play sports because I'm Mexican. Like, I grew up in a Latino traditional household where
Mhm.
women clean, the men sit around and not do nothing. Like, my mom served my dad food. I had to still come home after, a full day at school, full day of sports, and come home and clean before I can go outside and play. Like that was just non-negotiable. So
Mhm.
I made it work. And I've been asked in the past, like, did you even have a childhood? Because I was also the oldest girl in my house. My sister had already
Mhm.
moved out. So it was my older brother and then me. So I was the oldest girl in my household. So essentially, I was like the second mother to my sisters. I had to
Mhm.
balance all that at a young age, and I didn't have another option. So to me, that was all that I knew. And so whenever I would go to school and I would talk to my teachers, they felt for me and they wanted to help. And I'm like, my parents don't want me in sports because they feel like I'm not helping out that much, or they're not going to pick me up
Mhm.
they're not going to come to pick me up twice a day, like come pick my sisters up or something, and then come pick me up.
Mhm.
So then my coaches and parents in my like teams would
Mhm.
basically take turns on who would take me home. And I had all that help. And because I was a good athlete, back to the whole scholarship thing. I remember during track and field, I didn't have the shoes, the running shoes that you needed because when you're like in sprints and stuff like that, when you do like the
Mhm.
400-meter dash, you need spikes, like different types of shoes that not
Mhm.
just like your normal running shoes, like for cross country. So there was coaches that got together and they did like a little fundraiser to pay for my shoes because I knew my parents were not going to help. And of course, I come from a low income background. Like my parents didn't have the money to do that. So for all of that, I'm so grateful because I had that foundation and that background of of
Mhm.
supportive other people's parents and other coaches and
Mhm.
teachers who wanted to help me because they saw the drive in me, like we have to help this girl, like she's really good, like we have to get her to cross country camp.
Mhm.
It's $300 for the camp. And so my parents weren't going to pay for that. My dad was like, well, you can't go by yourself if you go to camp. We couldn't even stay at a friend's house. So then my coaches were like, what if your sister goes too? So then they were
Mhm.
creating a fundraiser for me and my sister to go. So I always say, like, advocate for yourselves, talk to people, reach out for help. There's always someone that's going to help. And I think that's why until this day and age, like I don't take no for an answer. Like I'm going to make it happen no matter what. Like I don't know where that money might come from, but it's going to come from somewhere and we're going to find out. And like we get to that point, we'll figure it out. And like, I mean, I think I'm a testament to it. Like it will always like pan out. If you don't have the resources, you will always be able to find them. There's always people that are willing to help. I have always reached out and applied, not only from as a kid in sports to applying to scholarships for college and now having applied to scholarships to pursue my aviation career. So that's to say, tangent back to what I was saying, how I had met that pilot, the female pilot. She shared how she got there. I still keep in contact with her, and she's a great mentor. And I've followed like all her steps, and now it's like it's not a straight line to get where I want to be. I'm still not a
Mhm.
commercial airline pilot, but every step of the way has been it's not it's just it's like an obstacle course.
Yeah, so there's just so much that you shared, and especially around being resourceful and not letting that be an excuse and not letting all the barriers and things that you're like, oh, maybe this is not for someone like me. I don't have the resource, so I'm not going to try. So you just
Yeah.
showed like, I mean, like you're right now, you are not a commercial pilot yet, but you're pilot license and working for a major airline. And that's already incredible on its own. But what makes it even more powerful is your journey. Like you said, you got into UC Berkeley, got those scholarships, became a flight attendant because you were, pursuing that a desire to continue traveling and to
Mhm.
go back to Brazil. And then, the next step was like when you got into an aviation academy on scholarship again, using your resources and getting your private and commercial license and navigating being one of the only Latinas in this space. So I just want
Yes.
to like honor that and help
Thank you.
others just see, like, the journey that you've gone through, and, like,
Yeah.
we've all learned how you were able to do a lot of that because you didn't let barriers and things that seem like they were gonna stop you from stopping you.
Yeah.
Just even, like, thinking back into when you were in UC Berkeley and when you thought of becoming a flight attendant, and especially in our society where there's so much bias around the kind of jobs that you get, especially you coming from Berkeley, and I know
Mhm.
that you were doing a business, and our society, especially, like, in that school that you were in, they value more jobs like corporate or tech or finance,
Mhm.
and you went into becoming a flight attendant, so I'm
Yeah.
just curious of, like,
How
what
did all
you
happen?
yeah, like, how did that happen? How did you navigate people's perception while you were doing this to be strategic to, like, build the kinda
Mhm.
lifestyle that you wanted, but just wanna, like, help our listeners to see, like, success and career doesn't have to look a certain way or, like, the
Mhm.
way that everyone glamorizes, like, you have to be a lawyer, a doctor in finance and
Mhm.
banking,
Yeah.
and how you decided to go into this route, but you had like a bigger picture in mind and you were seeing it strategically.
I think that when I went to Berkeley, I applied as an undeclared major because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted, like what my career of choice would be. Like I didn't
Mhm,
have something that I was passionate about. Like most, like, like you said, there's so many people that choose the lawyer route or the medical field
mhm,
or, public health. And they know that they want to be this specific person or become something, and I didn't. And so my entire 4 years and even after Berkeley, I was always asking myself, like, what is my passion? What am I passionate about? I was in the Latino Business Student Association at Berkeley, and yeah, we were surrounded by the big four accounting firms, so you can go into accounting or you can do, there was other clubs, and like you could work for Google and things like that, but none of that was something that I was like passionate about. Like I didn't love it. I was just going to do it for the money. And I
mhm,
wanted to do something that I enjoyed doing, that I was happy waking up in the morning to do. So I think that whole time, like since I got to school, it was always trying to figure out what I wanted to be, what I wanted to be when I got older. And I think that because I came from a low income background and like my parents weren't gonna be like, hey, what are you gonna like, they didn't pressure us to like
mhm,
know what we wanted to do and who we wanted to become. It was like a huge self discovery. So I personally feel like I chose to study abroad one more year, like do like a fifth year abroad because all my friends were going into that role of like they did an internship during that summer, during their summers at Berkeley, and then they now got that full-time offer after. And so I'm like, well, I don't have a full-time offer because I didn't really apply to any of these places because I don't really want to work there. So I was always
Mhm.
trying to like discover what was I happy, like passionate about. So I always say that, aviation found me, like, and it's really thanks to Brazil, because Brazil opened up those doors for me. Because had I not gone to Brazil, I wouldn't have learned Portuguese. I wouldn't have applied to the airlines as a Portuguese speaker. I wouldn't have gotten into the airlines as a flight attendant, and then I would have never discovered my passion for becoming a pilot. So I always stayed curious, and I never gave up hope that my passion would find me, or I would find my passion. And now that, I am a commercial multi-engine rated pilot, I am so thankful that I never gave up because it's something that I love. Like I feel it in like my veins. Like I love everything aviation. I love planes. I love flying them. Like I'm good at it. I always say the only thing stopping me from being where I want to be right now is the money. It's always been the money, but it's because I am not rich. I didn't come from that. I don't have my mom and dad or anyone that I can call up and say, hey, let me borrow this much money. And that's where I take it all the way back. When I decided that this was the journey that I'm going to take, like I'm going to become a pilot, I said, you know what? I'm going to figure this out on my own. And if I can become a private pilot, I'm meant to become a
Mhm.
commercial airline pilot one day. So I started looking up flight schools in my area because at the time I lived in Southern California, and I had done that discovery flight, but that school wanted like $100,000, and I
Mhm.
applied for a loan and I got denied. Um, and that's when, most people would reach out and get a cosigner, and I didn't have that. So
Mhm.
I'm like, okay, well, there's got to be another way. There's always a way. So then I enrolled into Mount San Antonio College. They have a commercial flight program where you can get your
Mhm.
associates in commercial flight. Keep in mind, I already have my bachelor's from Berkeley. I don't need an associate's, but
Mhm.
in my mind, this clicked. When you apply to a community college, they have funding. You can apply for a student loan through the school.
Mhm.
And because when I went to Berkeley, I was on a full ride, so I didn't really need to take out loans. So I wasn't in debt from college. So I'm like, you know
Mhm.
what? Now's the time for me to pull out a loan, and then I can use that money to pay for my private pilot's license. And they always give you an estimate of how much it's going to be. But I want to say that total time for my private pilot's license might have been like $15,000 at the end of everything,
Compared to
because
like 100,000, right?
compared, that was just one license though, and then I will
Mm.
walk you through the steps of every other license. And now it's gotten more expensive, but at the time to rent a Cessna 150, 152 was about $100 an hour, which means fuel's included. There's other flight schools that will provide the plane, but you have to pay for the fuel separately. So it could be $100 an hour for the rental, and then fuel can be an extra $60. So then if you flew for 1 hour, that would have been 160. Flight time is kind of like when you, like, let's just say like you start your car and like the miles start going up, like when you're
Mhm.
losing gas. Like, so you drove, essentially in a plane, it'll be like your Hobbs time. Like I flew 4 today. So that's how they
Mhm.
calculate how much you're going to get paid. I mean, how much you're going to owe them. And then that's just the rental of the plane. Then you have to pay for the flight instructor. So then let's just say I already paid the 160 for just 1 hour. If the fuel wasn't included, and then the instructor is like it depends on the schools where you go to. That's why you have to like shop around, like see what school, what
Mhm.
rates are better, what what you're paying for the instructor. Is the instructor independent, so like they make their own price. So I went to a school where the instructor wasn't independent, so I had to pay him $40 an hour. So sometimes if they have to get there, if they say, hey, we're starting today at 4 o'clock and you get there at 4:30, his clock started at 4 o'clock. So you're already paying
Uh-huh.
him that starting at 4. And if you
Uh-huh.
end at like 6, that's 2 hours. Like you have to pay. So that's $80 right there. That was an addition. Like it's like 160 for the rental plus the $80 for the instructor. And so then each flight was starting, things add up. So when I started figuring out like this is like an expensive sport, an expensive hobby that
Yeah.
I I don't know how I'm going to figure it out, but if I can figure this out, I am meant to be a pilot because this is some crazy thing coming from someone who doesn't have the money. I was a brand new baby flight attendant who wasn't making much money at the time. And luckily, I lived at home. So I lived at my sister's, so I didn't have to pay rent. So in a way, that was what let me pay for that, like, make it work. But
Uh-huh.
when I got into back to going to Mount Sac, when I got into Mount Sac, I applied for a student loan and I used that money to help me pay for my private pilot's license. And I started at that flight school, and my instructor that was there, like I said, she ended up leaving to the airlines. So then I was left with a new instructor. That new instructor, I had him for like 2 flights and then he left too. And then at that point, I'm like, you know what? Let me go back to the first place that I went to, the first flight school that I went to, and see if that instructor is still available to see if he can finish my
Uh-huh.
private pilot's license. So it was a lot of, I started and stopped and started and stopped. And then
Uh-huh.
whenever you get with a new instructor, you kind of have to show them what you got. Like you got to show them what you know. So then you're
Uh-huh.
doing a lot of backtracking, like, oh, I have to show you how to do my takeoffs and landings. I have to prove to you that I can do a solo flight. So that happened. And then finally I believe it took the world to shut down because of COVID and there was no movement and my flight school was still open. So I finished my private pilot's license August, I believe it was August 2020. And I'm like, oh my God, I cannot believe I did it. That day that I had to take that, it's you do an oral portion where you sit there with the instructor and they just ask you everything that there is about the private pilot license. And then there is the actual flight portion. So it was like about an hour of an oral. He's just asking me questions and then, I have to answer it. And then, you have your books you can, look up if you need help or want to explain something. And then every DPE stands for designated pilot examiner. So like, their exams are a little bit different, but they pretty much cover the same stuff. They just may ask it in
Uh-huh.
a different way. And then afterwards, if you pass that, you'll go and do the flight portion. So yeah, I remember the day like it was yesterday, was like sick to my stomach. I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? Like, who do I think I am, And
Uh-huh.
I did the oral and I passed. And then he's like, all right, are you ready to fly? And I'm like, let's go. So, for private pilot, you do some maneuvers, you do some takeoffs and some landings. There's like special type of landings that you need to do. Land within like the 1,000 feet, or like there's like soft field landing, like if you're landing in a soft field, so you kind of have to like hold the nose off the ground so you don't like slam it. Short field takeoffs and landings, like it's in the word, if you ever have to land in a short field, can you take off using the max room of the runway? And then can you land with minimal, not having to take that much of that runway? So, I want to say like since my private pilot's license, I know that when I started doing this, it was like an adrenaline rush. Like I'm like, I'm
Uh-huh.
a badass. Like I can do this. And then like when you go out and you do maneuvers, I loved doing like banking in the air, like 45 degrees, and you have to do like 360 like that. And then you choose the side, the left or the right side. The right side's always a little harder. And then the left side, but they let you choose. Sometimes they'll choose for you. They give you like a cross country flight plan. You have to do a flight plan. So back then, I always say like I learned how to fly based off of like a sectional. It's like a paper map of the airspace. You have to know the
Uh-huh.
airspace and you have to plan. You have like a ruler and you plan, like you can see like the distance and then which airspaces to avoid, because it's like freeways in the sky and each airport has their designated, it's a certain class of airspace. So you need to know like, hey, if I'm flying over this airspace, like let's just say Ontario Airport, because that's where I used to
Mhm.
live, how high does their airspace go? And if I'm flying below it, you need to contact them because then you can get in trouble. So you need to know all the
Mhm.
rules. And so that was your private pilot phase. And then after that, you have your instrument rating. So your instrument rating is literally freeways in the sky, and you fly solely based off of instruments. So you're looking inside the plane, you're not looking outside anymore. And then you have these things that are called foggles that kind of like block you from like looking outside and kind of cheating. So you're like literally like
Mhm.
just looking at the instruments so you don't get distracted.
Mhm.
And you have your instructor when you're under the foggles who will always be like guiding you. And
Mhm.
for that license, that's when I had got into the academy. There's different
Mhm.
airlines that have academies. That's when I had applied. And after my private pilot's license, I'm like, well, how am I going to get to the next round? You know, like this is where I'm like, we're
Mhm.
going to figure it out as we go. And I had applied to the academy. I got in after like, I think a year of waiting. And I got in like 2021 for
And this
like a
is for, like,
20,
a major airline, right?
this is for a major airline, yeah. And then I was there for about 8 months working on one rating. It was a new school, so there was a lot of things that went wrong, that were going wrong. Aside from all of that, there are opportunities. Like you don't need to go to the airline academy, but the good thing about going to these airline academies is that there is funding, there's scholarships that you could apply to. There's different organizations, nonprofit organizations that you could apply to. Join, become a member, and they will help you. You know, they offer
Mhm.
scholarships. And so that's exactly what I did. There's the Organization of Black Aerospace Pilots, that's OBAP. There's the NGPA, National Gay Pilots Association. There's women in aviation. There's pilots in aerospace. They changed their name recently. It was the Latino Pilots Association. There's the Pacific Asian Professional Pilots Association. There's Sisters of the Sky. So as you can see, there's plenty of
Yeah, there's
nonprofit
plenty.
organizations that you can join and be a part of. And they offer scholarships because the airlines partner with these organizations to be able to give out money so
Mhm.
that people like me can, apply to it and, help me get there. So I had got accepted to the program. I got accepted on a full ride. So
Which
my
is
time there,
amazing because it's
yeah,
expensive.
yeah, that was incredible. It was something that you didn't have to worry about anymore. You're like, wow, I don't have to worry about, all I have to do is worry about flying. But because that school didn't have enough resources, I was already not flying that often. Like I would fly very little, and there were a lot of things that happened, but if you don't fly often in aviation, you need to fly at least 3, 4 times a week in order to remember
Mm.
everything.
Yeah.
If you say I'm gonna fly once a week or once every 2 weeks, you're gonna forget stuff. It's like learning how to drive. Like you need to do it consistently until you're able
Mhm.
to take your exam. If you don't practice parallel parking, you're not just gonna be able to go out there and parallel park one day. Like you really need to practice these things. So in the end, it was for my best interest to I was ready. I felt ready to take the next step, which is take my instrument rating check ride. So I ended up making the hard decision of leaving and finishing my flight training elsewhere. So a month after leaving, I went to another flight school because like I said, there are so many flight schools that you can go to. Like just there's not just one. And if things are not working
Mhm.
out there, it doesn't mean that it's not going to work out for you. It's just that probably isn't the right fit for you and you can find whatever you need somewhere else. So and then, when I was there, I had about 6, 7 instructors. There's just so many things that I'm like, I need to look out for myself. And
Mhm.
I was so overworked, so over distraught, so like, I don't even want to say the word depressed because I don't, use that lightly, but I was just not emotionally well, where I'm like, I need to do what's best for me. And so I again looked for a DPE, a designated pilot examiner in the area, because I'm like, I'm ready to take this exam. I feel ready. I know I'm going to pass. Sure enough, a month later after leaving, I had scheduled that exam. I went out, rented their plane,
Mhm.
and I passed that exam. So this was 2023, I believe. And then after that, I had like that fire lit in me because I felt like so much time was taken away from me, and like time is money, and I literally wasn't making any because I was literally just in school.
Mhm.
Um I put myself in a flight school that's close to where I live now, and I got my commercial pilot's license. And then I'm like, you know
So
what?
was that like even though you passed the test, you still had to go and do more
Well,
schooling?
this is the thing. There's your private pilot's license, then there's your instrument rating, then there's your commercial pilot's license, then there's your multi-engine rating. Those are all four different licenses that you
Mm,
need to
mhm,
take, that you need to pay a certain like a different price for each of them. And
mhm,
it's all you have to take a written exam, then you have to take the day of the oral exam and the flight portion. So for each of these, I had to do that. Except for the multi-engine rating, that's just an added on kind of like bonus to your commercial
mhm.
pilot's license. You need that in order to go to the airlines because at the airlines, you're going to be flying planes with dual engines, you know?
Yeah.
So it'll be more than one engine. So you need your multi-engine rating. So essentially right now I have all the licenses that I need to go to the airlines. You need
Mhm,
1,500 hours to go there. You know how like certain professions need you to put in like those hours. Yeah, so it's the same thing with pilots. You need 1,500 hours, and then once you have those licenses, you're able to move on to the regionals. Those are the smaller planes, like the CRJs or ERJs. Those are the ones you kind of see that say like American Eagle, Delta Connection, United Express. Those are like the
mhm,
smaller planes with like 50 to 70 seats, and you'll fly there for about a year or two or until you upgrade to captain, and then you move on to the bigger ones like mainline United, mainline American, mainline Delta, where you'll be flying the Boeing 737s or the Airbuses, or if
mhm,
you get asked or offered, you have even like the wide body planes like the Boeing 777s or the 787s or the 767s. So it depends on what plane availability they have that they'll offer you. Like this is the aircraft that you'll be flying.
mhm,
And so those are the two next steps that I need to take. But where I'm at right now is the way that pilots build those hours is you either rent a plane, fly on your
mhm,
own, and we call it time building. You find a partner and you go fly with them and you both log the time, or you can instruct. So you can become a flight instructor. And that's another license that
mhm,
you need to take. So that's where I'm going to be at. That's what I'm going to be doing this year is studying to get my CFI, my certified flight instructor license so that I can teach people how to fly so that I no longer have to spend my money or continue to apply
mhm,
to scholarships. And then essentially that's what's going to help me get to my 1,500 hours. And then right now I'm a GoJet Wingman cadet and a
mhm,
SkyWest cadet. So these are two regional airlines that I am essentially like a pilot cadet for. Like
mhm,
I have a basically if I finish my hours, I will be able to interview with them. I have a first certain
mhm.
guaranteed interview and they will prep you
Mhm.
for it because they want you to come work for them. Like you already applied to be a
Yeah.
cadet. So now, as long as you do everything, update them, update your hours every month, and you finish your hours, you'll be able to be guaranteed an interview with them. And then if you get accepted, you'll start flying for them. So those are the next steps. And then after you're there for like a couple years, they have like for example, GoJet and SkyWest both have partners like with United
Mhm,
Airlines. And then SkyWest also flies under Alaska and Delta. So then if I would want to go there, I could apply there too. And
mhm.
there's just these organizations that I had mentioned before that offer scholarships, not only offer that, but they also offer mentorship. And every year they have conferences where you can go, and it's like a huge expo where you can talk to these airlines and you can network with potential people you'll be working for and recruiters and stuff like that. So that's how you kind of get your foot in, by going to
Mhm.
these expos, these conferences, showing face, showing them that you're interested, letting them know where you're at. And I always say, like, those are huge ways to connect and then meet your future coworkers. And those are the next steps that I need to take. And I had no idea about any of this world when I first started. So now, do I have all the answers of like how to make it happen? Like, of course,
Mhm.
it looks different for everyone. It's not a straight line. Like, it has not been easy. Like, of course, like I said, I'm not at my hours yet, but I'm on my way
Mhm.
to, I'm a third of the way. And I always say that you can achieve and you can make anything that you want happen if you believe in yourself and you don't give up and you don't take no for an answer. And I have never taken no for an answer. If things didn't work out at the academy, I moved on and I found another school and another instructor that can work with me and that I liked and I knew that I can finish. And like, that fire has always been lit in me. And I know that no matter what, I'm going to get there. Like, I'm 34 years old right now, and I know I always said like, "Oh, I wanna be there by 35," but, like, there's not really, like, an age, like, to
Mhm.
determine when you get there. You can retire at, like, 60 years old, I believe, for an airline pilot. So I still have a long career ahead of me. Like, even if I get
Yeah.
there at 40, I still have 20 years, and as a flight attendant, since I started in 2015, I'm at 11 years now, and I've flown the international routes. I fly with these pilots that lay over in Manila, in Auckland, in Australia, like all over the world, in Hong Kong. I hang out with them. Like, we go to dinner and we talk, and like, they're
Mhm.
like, you just need to get here. So my life as a flight attendant looks no different than theirs, except they make more money than me. And
Mhm.
so I know that I can do it and I know that I will get there. It's just the pathway has not always been, you know, a straight line. It has not always
Yeah.
been easy, but I've never given up, and I know that I'm going to get there. You might see people pass you up. I have friends that are already there and started their journey with me, but our lives are not the same, and I have not had the same experiences as them. And back to, being a woman in aviation, being a Latina woman, and
Yeah.
compared to like men and other people, and also I'm not white. I don't have that white privilege, and those things really do exist, and
Mhm.
you see it so much more in this industry, especially because it's a male dominated industry. But not only that, I always say like, oh, I know so many Latina pilots. Everywhere else that I go, that I introduce myself or I share, someone shares like, "Oh, she's a pilot." They're like, "Wow, I've never met a Latina pilot." So I need to always remind myself, like, let me give myself credit, because to
Yeah.
me, everyone is a pilot. Every girl that I know is a pilot, but it's not like that. And I know so many other girls with similar stories, but I also didn't have, like, I don't want to be like boohoo me, but I also didn't have the supportive parents, like, I
Yeah.
didn't have my mom and dad to call and be like, "Hey, this is a struggle. Like, I need help. What do I do?" I didn't have them to seek out for guidance. I had to reach out to mentors, to people that are already there. I will speak to pilots on every flight that I work. And since I first began, I'm like, "Hey, I'm becoming a private pilot. I'm a student pilot." And I will go up to the flight deck and they will help me. If I say like, "Hey, I have a homework question. Can you help me with this?" And they're like, "Wow, it's been years, but yeah, let's give it a shot." So I seek out and take advantage of every opportunity that I can. And I will
Mhm.
always ask for help. Like, I will always, reach out. And I think that's what's gotten me where I am today, because I knew nothing about aviation, when I first wanted to become a flight attendant. I didn't know the difference between regionals and mainline and all these airlines that exist. Before even studying abroad in Madrid, I didn't know all the other countries that were a part of Europe that were nearby. Like, I didn't know that I can go to France and take like a short flight or take the train to another city, like from Madrid to Barcelona. I didn't know that I can fly so, like, that Italy was so close to Spain and I can also fly there. Like, this whole world, like when they say like the world is your oyster, it really is. And I feel like I have made it like a part of my identity now. Like, this is who
Mhm.
I am. Like, I have been to more than 35 countries. I speak 3 languages now because of this life that I've built for myself.
Yeah.
Like I never had those opportunities, like, and it all stemmed from that little girl in me that like never stopped asking questions, never gave up, always wanted more, and I still want more. I'm not where I want to be, but I'm excited to where I'm headed, and I cannot wait till I get there because I know that it's going to feel so amazing when I finally do because I have worked so hard for it, and every year I feel like I'm growing into like I you always want to be the better version of yourself,
Mhm.
but it's like I amaze myself with like how much growth that I have, you know, like achieved and like where I'm at and like how good I feel now. Like not just my like health, wealth, like my mindset, mind, body, all of that is like so connected that no matter what, no one is ever going to be able to take that away from me, and no one's ever going to be like you can't do it, or you dream too big, or that's never going to happen, or like the instructors who were like, she's not cut out for it. I remember someone said that was what
Mhm.
they left as a review on you, and I'm like, they're like, she's never going to make it to her commercial pilot's license, and look at me now. I have my commercial pilot's license and my multi-engine rating added to that. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just proving people wrong, and I'm here for it.
Yes.
And yeah.
I love it. I love all this. Thank you, Betty. Like, this conversation is so inspiring. And like you said, is showing that what is possible in being proof that Latinas belong in aviation, and
Yeah.
that you won't let no like be an excuse or be a barrier or stop you from getting what you want. So before we wrap up, I want to ask one final question. So what's one thing that you want listeners to take away from your story, especially for the women who are considering careers in male dominant or non-traditional fields, or women that are that Latina, that woman of color that is thinking, I want to be a pilot or I want to be in aviation, and like, how do I get there? Or this is just hard or expensive. Like, I know you
Mhm.
kind of went through a little bit of that, but like, what is like one final like takeaway that you want them to get from this conversation and your story?
I think that especially for, like you said, like someone who's thinking of a career change or who majored in something in college and is doing something completely different. And if it is the aviation field that they want to go into, and if it is becoming a pilot that they want to do, I always say like take that leap, bet on yourself, go to a local flight school in your area, whatever area you live in, like there's always local airports. Find a local flight school, go pay that $100, 150, do that discovery flight. See if that's something that you can see yourself doing. See if like how that plane makes you feel, because that will be telling. Like if you're dizzy, if you get sick, it might not be for you, There's so many things, but I say like if they do the discovery flight, they like it, they fell in love with it just doing that flight, and they don't have the resources. The organizations I mentioned are great ones to become a member of. They have student membership prices as low as like $25 just to become a student member. There's mentors that will guide you, that will check in on you. So these organizations are great. If you have the money, if you come from money, or even if you can get the money, if you could get the loan, at least 100,000, because every rating is expensive. But that way you can just continue flying, And while you do get that scholarship, I mean that loan, if that's what the route you take, and you apply to scholarships while you're at it, there's so many aviation scholarships out there. Apply, 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 never give up. One summer like I said, I applied maybe to like 15 scholarships, and out of those 15 I
Wow.
got like 5 of them that year. So like you get back what you put in, like put
Mhm.
into your own cup, bet on yourself. I think that if you you want to do it, definitely you have to do it consistently because I take it from me. I did one flight every 2 weeks, or even when I already learned that. That was during my private pilot. That's why it took me a while to get my private pilot's license because I would start and stop because I didn't have the money to just, every flight was like three, 400, $500. And so that was a lot of money. So once I finally got a loan, got some scholarships and that helped me, I was able to fly consistently, like literally every day until leading up to my private pilot, check ride. And I think that once you do that, if you can fly consistently, and you get that money, you're gonna get there. You'll get there maybe even faster than me, but I always say like don't be discouraged if things don't work out. If there's things that are out of our control, and that's something that I've had to learn. Like life and most things are out of control. Weather, you can't control. If the weather's bad, you can't fly during your private pilot's license, well then, we'll get to it when the next day comes. Then maintenance, if the plane breaks down, it's good that it broke down while you're on the ground and you identified that problem rather than it being in the air and then you have like a problem in
Mhm,
the air. And then, family, just different things might happen, life happens, and as long as you never lose sight of what like you want to do, but I think it's an amazing career. I wish I would have known about it when I was younger. I didn't have, of course, at my school, or I didn't have that guidance. I didn't
mhm,
see that as a career. I never explored aviation engineering as an even option for me because, you think pilots equal men. And now I can tell any woman that's out there, any like little girl or anyone who's maybe thinking of sharing this with their daughter or whoever is listening, like, you know what? I want my niece or someone to become a pilot. Like, buy them that airplane toy, tell them that these opportunities are there for them, take them to do a introductory flight, and if you fall in love with it like I did, you'll figure out a way. And like it hasn't been easy. Like I have mentioned, there's been a lot of tears, a lot of hard work. I feel like I have never studied more for each license than I did in college. I studied hard in college, but this is another level of like
mhm,
learning. You really have to want it. And you can't just want it for the money. The money is there. Like you're gonna be living really well. You're gonna be, making great money. That's like the added bonus if we want to think about it that
mhm,
way. You have to have a passion for it because if you don't, you're not going to be happy. And this goes back to what I said in the beginning. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I didn't just want to pick something that didn't make me happy. I picked
mhm,
something that I was passionate about, that I got happy to wake up in the morning, and every single day that I went to go flight, practice or do my flight training, I was so excited. I was so happy. I'm like, man, this is what I get to do. I'm in the air learning to fly and I'm looking down at, like the little, how small the city is. Or, when I fly at night, I'm like, wow, look at all these beautiful lights. Like that makes me so happy. And I knew that like burning desire is what I've always been looking for. So if that's not what you get from, once you're in that field, then maybe that field, whatever it is you do, if it's even if it's not aviation, might not be for you. And I always say it's never too late to start over. Like I have friends that are 45 doing a career change, 50 still pursuing becoming a pilot. Like they're where I'm at because,
mhm.
they realized later on in life that they weren't happy and they wanted a new career change. So it's never too late. And why not try something new if you're unhappy, or, don't let fear stop you from, achieving like your next best thing. You never know what's going to be on the other side and how much happier you'll be. I don't know if you take anything away from this is, never give up for your dreams. Sounds cliche, but like I haven't ever stopped pursuing it and I still am. And I love my life and I always say like if I were to die today, I could die happy. Of course, I want to reach my end goals.
Yeah.
I have achieved so much at like for my age and I'm just excited to like, in the future write a book about everything that I've been through cuz this is just one part of my aviation career, but it's like family, the traumas, the everything, like there's so many different chapters and it's so layered, but I think that's the beautiful thing, everyone has a story and you just have to, follow your own heart.
Well, thank you so much again, Betty. This was so inspirational and amazing just to, and for me, knowing you and be able to witness your journey, I'm so excited for where you're going to be heading and, where you're going to be flying me to.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, and then if there's anyone
Of course.
that wants to reach out on social media, on Instagram,
Mhm.
I'm La Piloto Betty G. But if people will reach out and follow my journey, and I can guide them too, or be a mentor to someone because life is about paying it forward, and I have always been a
Yes.
huge advocate for that since I've had help my entire life. There's
Yeah. Well, thank
ways.
you, Betty. We'll definitely add that to the show notes, your Instagram, and people can follow your journey. And if they have any questions, they can DM you because we're not going to be giving out your phone number.
Yeah, or email. Yeah, I'm gonna get all these calls.
All right. Well, thank you. Career Baddies. This is part of our industry series where we break down exactly how to grow in specific industries as ambitious women of color. And whether aviation is your path or you're in an industry that's structured, hierarchical, and where moving up isn't just about doing a good job, it's about who sees it and when, I want you to hear this. Being one of the only women of color in the room changes how your work gets seen. And if we were to work together, this is where we'll start. We'll look at the last couple weeks at work and get really clear where you're already doing more than your title. Like when you're making calls in the moment, stepping in when things go left, training people, or being the one everyone goes to when something needs to be handled fast. Because in these kind of environments, doing that isn't enough on its own. It has to be seen and tied to you by the people making decisions. So we shift how that shows up. Not by adding more work, but making it clear what you handled, what decisions you made, and what the outcome was. So it's not getting grouped as the team handled it, you're the one getting credit for the results. Then we get specific about how promotions actually work where you are. Who's making these calls? What are they looking for? What kind of situations or responsibilities actually signals that you're ready? Because in every industry and company, it's different, and guessing will keep you in the same spot. And then we work on the moments that usually get missed, like when you know exactly what's going on, but you hold back because of hierarchy. Or when you soften what you're saying so it doesn't come off in the wrong way. Or when you leave a conversation thinking, I should have just said it. We fix that in real time. So when these moments come up again, you're clear, direct, and sound like someone who's already operating at the next level. So you're not just the one they rely on, you're the one they move up. If this sounds like you can DM me on Instagram at Jessica Lynn Rojas or book a consult at jessicalynn-wellness.com/scheduling. And if you want more support to your inbox, join Dear Ambitious Women of Color. The link is in the show notes. Take care of yourself, career baddies. Vámonos.